And we're live again. Sorry about that, folks. That technical difficulties. Yeah. Let me post in the Discord real quick that we are live again. All right. And make sure that YouTube actually did the thing it was supposed to do. It did. Cool. Yep, we are live. Perfect. Okay.
Okay, there it goes.
People are saying. Yep. All right. Perfect. So we were in the middle of questions. Sarah will probably be right back. I think he's still having some technical difficulties. That's okay. He's also running on like no sleep after working a double. So, you know.
Yeah,
we
listen, if you can hear us from the void, if it's just easier to go to sleep, respect, man. You take care of you.
Yes, Black Cat, we can see you. And no one saw anything. These are not the droids you're looking for. Speaking of Black Cat, whole list of questions, starting with, did you drink enough water today?
No. But in my defense, I got the big bitch out. So that it's being mixed with my like 200% alcohol drink. We're fine.
Very good. Which, by the way, list off what you're drinking again, because you told me earlier and I could not remember for my life.
It's 3 ounces of absinthe, and I get the Grande or Grand Absinthe. I don't know. I went to public school. It's 138 proof. That's all I know. And it's made in France in the traditional way with the wormwood.
Very nice.
I put in about a half teaspoon of sugar because it helps cut some of the acidity of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I add in 2 ounces of dry red wine. I got some really like dope berries that are soaked in a sweet red wine.
Okay.
Top that with cherry juice until full, and then throw in a bunch of ice and let the ice melt, and then you mix it in. It's a lot.
That is a lot. That's interesting.
It tastes really good, though.
I believe you, and also...
There's also cherry bark bitters. There we go.
Oh,
I was forgetting something.
Gotcha.
And it's in my cup of audacity because it has vines and grapes on it, and it's from like the 70s. I got it from behind a secondhand shop. Someone had just left the box out there, and I was like, this is haunted. It's coming home with me.
That is so on brand, it's not even funny.
You have no idea.
Kai Oakenshield says, Melkor being complicated, to no one's surprise.
Fuck you, Kai. Love you. That is my platonic soulmate, so if I gently bully him, it's my right and my duty.
You do you. I mean, we routinely, it's fine. Also, Kat says, Melkor, this is why we're friends. Well, Freons, but, you know, that's fine. And love you, Melkor. Also, how did you come to work with your deities, and what is the favorite part of your practice, if you have one?
So unfortunately, this is also going to be kind of a long-winded answer because I grew up, like I said, in the future liberals want. So I was able to go through the entire spectrum. My mom is Catholic, and my dad is also Catholic, but I was allowed to ping pong across the whole thing. Think of like the old 2000s screensaver where the ball just bounces everywhere. Turns out that was them more like playing tennis with my dumbass, but there were lessons that needed to be learned along the way. And so this is like a 20-something year thing. Um, I have been trying to think of like the sweetened condensed milk version of how to explain this, and there's just not one besides that. It started because I, as a child, really, 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 really wanted to work with Egyptian gods, but fuck, they're gone. And it turns out they're not. Who knew? Not me in 5th grade. About 6th grade, though, I started to get little tappings. And Anubis was like, thank Christ you finally paid attention, and then was like, here you go, and shoved me to Thoth. And he was kind of the beginning of it. And through him, I've worked my way into my current pantheons, which I can go through. But like I said, it's a bit of a long-winded answer.
This is the show of rants. Like, come on.
I just thought I'd put that out there. So after Thoth, and it started because I was in a metaphysics shop in Houghton Lake, Michigan, the fucking boonies. And they had a copy of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, Awakening Osiris. I looked over, I can't remember the author's name. And my mom was like, not so much. And my aunt's like, we can do this now or later. They're being tapped. Because my mom was really hoping for a Catholic kid. She got that in my middle sister. And then once I picked up that, Anubis went, love you, bye. He's on the altar. He has no interest. He stops in every once in a while and is like, yo, what's up? You're still here? Awesome. Leaves. And it's like 6 to 8 months. No matter how much I begged, I was like, you're so cool. And he goes, I need people who can do work. Fair. And then from there, I tried. I was the most annoying fedora tipping atheist for about 6 months at 14. I did both religious and secular Buddhism. I tried anything that wasn't a closed practice for about 6 months each until I was like, fuck. I just want to work with the old gods, but they're not really around. And Thoth was like, you're pretty. It's fine. You'll get here. I believe in you. And I noticed during this whole timeline, because it took a couple years, I kept building altars completely by accident. Because I would be like, ooh, this is kind of cool. This would go really nice together. And I'll put them in like their little thing. And I'd look over and I'm like, fuck, that's an altar. Take it down, scatter. More time would pass. It would come back together. And it was like, fucking, I guess. Cool. Sure. Why not? And I think at about 16 is when I met Hades. And it was not a good time. It was a very low point in my life, without going into too much. And he came in as things got like really, really bad. And he was like, why don't you come sit with me for a little bit? And he's been my dad ever since. He just picked me up. He's like, I'm going to put you in my pocket. I have adopted you. And so whenever I need anything, I'm just like, hey, Dad, can you help me out? And he's like, I got you. And it was kind of weird because at that point, mixing pantheons was pretty frowned upon, at least in like the online community. And as a teenager, I didn't really have access to anything outside of online communities. And so that's when I started being like, I'm going to be in my little bubble. And I was like, well, Greece, Egypt, they kind of traded, they kind of occupied each other. it counts as like one, right? They synchronized at some point. Sure. And then the Morrigan came, and you don't tell the Morrigan no. I mean, like you could, but I chose life. Frankly. And she was like, you're not going to be a doormat anymore. And I was like, I feel if I say no or yes, I'm proving a point. And she was, yeah, no, it's fine. And I'm like, terrifying. Cool. And hot on her heels was set because I needed more chaos because I've got 4 Virgo placements, which means I don't change unless needed. And that was a whole hot ball of wax. That was I want to say 19 to 25 was a real banger of a time.
As you're also, doing the graduating high school and moving on to other things. And yeah, no, that's a whole fucking time, isn't it?
Yeah, getting into like the working. Oh, I shouldn't even say that. Official working. When you live on my side of the poverty line, you start working at like 13, 14. Just you don't tell the tax man.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a whole thing of upheaval, which, looking back now, I'm very grateful for it. But there were times where I was like, I love you, but we're going to fight behind a Denny's. Pure and simple. We just meet me behind the Denny's. You're going to beat me. I have no illusions here. But like, I need some catharsis. There we go. And then within the last 2 years, I was, is how I got to Baba Yaga. So I was like, I need to start doing ancestor work because of my family. There's me and my cousin who are the pagans, and we're the ones who do all of the workings. And I was like, well, shit. All right, I guess I'll keep up the ancestor altar.
They're not wrong.
They're not wrong. And as soon as I set up the ancestor altar, Baba Yaga came in and was like, I've been waiting. And I'm like, ma'am, please. And within 2 weeks, I found her. You can kind of see her in the background. I found a little Slavic grandma statue at a thrift shop. And it was one of those. It was like the Morgan. I could tell her no, but there would be consequences and repercussions. Mm-hmm. And not to say like you can't say no to a deity, because you absolutely can. But it was one of those, when you know that you gotta do something, you gotta do something. And I love her dearly, but she came with blood and thorns and spiders. So if you're getting into that, I make peace with just really big fucking spiders for like a year. That's not a joke. My roommates there was a whole summer where we had spiders living on, because I work from home. So I used to have to do all of my work at the kitchen table, which faces out the balcony. And there were at minimum 3 spiders all living in the, or living on the balcony doors. And when I say big, I mean like silver dollar big. Like,
wow,
these bitches could have beat me in an arm wrestling contest. And like once we had to squish one because it just got too fucking bold. Another one took its place within the hour. And the lesson for that was congrats. You are now at a point where you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And this is the least triggering way possible for you and your trauma. I was like, cool. Love that. Hate that. Thanks.
Hey, beautiful people.
All right, for take 2, welcome back, Sarenth. How you doing?
Hello.
Stressed. Finally figured
Yeah.
out the problem. It's Chrome.
Oh no.
So no matter what I was doing, the issues I was having were all linked back to Chrome. I'm not sure what the hell they did with their update. But yeah, I think I fat fingered the stream on my phone when I was trying to get it to work and killed the first stream.
Oh no.
Because I am fucking gifted and talented.
You're tired, man.
Also, that reminds me to not click the update button that's in the corner of my browser of Chrome.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Don't fucking do it, because whatever it did killed my ability to access the camera.
Love it. That's fabulous.
Yeah, the reason I was off the stream for so damn long is because I had to sit there and assess it. Couldn't figure it out. And I think it's a problem on mobile as well. Yay, StreamYard integration. It's great.
Yeah. Which, speaking of, we may or may not be off StreamYard relatively soon. We may be moving to OBS. Because StreamYard is honestly kind of expensive and doesn't give you that much for what you pay for. So, we're going to... Updates will come when I get to them.
Suffice to say, I've heard most of the conversation. I just haven't been able to put myself in it.
Cool. So I don't have to catch you up.
Sure.
Perfect.
I hope you've enjoyed my rambling. I
really have. So thank you.
All right. So the next question is, what's a favorite part of your practice if you have one?
Oh, yes. So I build my practice around my chronic depression because sometimes I'm a person and sometimes I am on battery saver mode, and that can go from like a day to 2 years was the longest one.
I feel that.
Yeah. So my base practice, something that I have to do every single day, is at some point I have to go, and it's usually before I go to bed. I go up to each of my altars, or I sit from my bed and I look at each of them and I say, thank you, I love you, good night. And I look at each of them individually. And if it's a good day, or I have, the energy to, I will light incense, because I usually put incense when I go to bed. I'll run the incense, and I have little offering cups for each of the spirits and gods that I hold cultists with. And I'll do like a little mini ritual. But I have to at least say, thank you, I love you, good night. And sometimes I'll switch it up to, good morning. But it's usually because I have insomnia. When I'm waking up in the morning, I'm already like 15 minutes late for work to log in. So by the time I'm like human, it's like noon, and I'm like 5 shots of espresso in and doing spreadsheets. So it's easier for me to do it at night, and that way I can keep it more consistent.
Gotcha. Very nice. All right. What's a skill or something you want to learn?
I want desperately to learn weaving, but on like a proper loom. So on my dad's side, my great-grandparents were master loomers before they moved to the Americas. Or they might still have been, but they passed before I could ever know them. And so they had like the whole setup, and they were weavers. And much like them, I do a lot of my stuff through textile. I do sewing, embroidery. I've tried knitting and crochet. They frustrate me, but like I have the barest skills. I did tatting for a while because I was born 80 and have just progressively gotten older.
Like you do.
Legit.
So I would love to, I can't do it because I live in an apartment, but I would love to get like a proper loom. And even if it's just making stuff for me and my family, I want to do loom work, which I think is where a lot of the spider shit with Baba Yaga comes in.
With ancestors that did a bunch of weaving? Yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah. For me, at least, I should have like prefaced this. Everything I say is my interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
But she is heavily connected with the ancestors, especially the female, or the housekeepers, I should say. Like her altar, it sits between a board of like my friends and family and my ancestor altar. And so she is legitimately the spider in the middle of the web of everything that makes me, me. And that is part of her lesson for me.
It's a good lesson.
Yeah.
So apparently I'm being instructed to move on to Snow's. If my computer would go, Snow has better questions if we want to move on to theirs. So let's try that. What's the relationship between your theology and your magical workings?
You know, I've been canoodling that question since they posted it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, it's everything lives in a community. So like my embroidery needles and my sewing needles are kept on Baba Yaga's altar. So anytime I need to do a project, I take them off, and she is in every textile work that I do. I have some really fancy pens that are kept on my altar with Thoth. I have some blood work tools that I keep for Hades. Not that he really requires it, but that's like it's a real personal thing that I'm keeping that in my back pocket for a while.
Yeah.
So everything I do is connected with them, if that makes sense. I bring them into everything, even if I don't have my like a ritual where I call them into it. They are already so integrated into my life that they are already part of the working.
That makes perfect sense. And
Yep.
Yeah. That honestly, goals, like,
it started off as I'm really tired and lazy and mentally unwell a lot of the time. So what is the easiest way I can do all of this? And now that I step back, I'm like, this was fucking brilliant. Way to go, depressed me.
I mean, yeah, way to go, depressed you, because like genuinely, isn't that the goal of polytheism, is to have the gods, ancestors, and spirits so integrated into your life that they are just in everything you do.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and sometimes they invite themselves. Baba Yaga lives in my stove. That's just a place she hangs out. She also sometimes hangs out in the air fryer, depending on what I'm cooking.
Makes total sense.
Good.
I'm really reminded of La Couteau and talking about the household gods literally being in the hearth, in the stove, that makes total sense to me.
Yep. Our apartment spirit. So, correct. When I moved into my apartment, and Malik, I believe, lives in the same place, there is the overarching place of where we're at. And then for me, there's the individual buildings, and then individual apartments all have separate spirits.
Same experience.
Phenomenal.
I've noticed this when I first got started doing paganism and spirit work. I was living in a completely different apartment. This was years ago. But yeah, I noticed the same thing where it was like, yeah, there's like the spirit, at least where I was living at the time, there was the spirit of the complex, which was kind of like pretty far removed from me because I was kind of like on the edge of the complex. And then there was the spirit of the building, like the whole building itself. And then there was the spirit of like my particular unit, and they were connected but not the same.
Yeah.
And those were also different than the land spirits.
Yeah, completely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, you know, she bounces in between the kitchen appliances, but when I moved in, it's always the garbage disposal is where I find that the apartment spirit not lives, but that's where I put all my offerings. So if I cook anything with eggs and I don't need the eggshells for a working or spell jar or something like that, eggs, at least a little bit of fat off of any meat that I'm cooking, or if I'm using like a bulb of garlic and one of them is withered or it's not good, that all goes into the garbage disposal. And that is how I feed them. And then I have a cup of water that I keep up. I usually rinse it out every week. I do that on the same day I do my ancestor water offering. And that is because it is either a Monday or a Tuesday, and I have to do that. And then I have to clean out the cat's water fountain. And since I bundle it all into one chore, it makes it easier to manage in my head, because then it's not 3 separate items. It's one item, A, B, C.
Yeah, no, the tracks.
I think that's something that's a really powerful tool in your tool chest, right? Being able to reframe things so that when you've got the spoons, you can get shit done. That's kind of genius. Like, it's to me, that is definitely an efficient way of doing it, and that totally grok.
That is my baseline, because that is something that is easily managed. And then I'm naturally a low energy person, so when I have like my really high up days, that's when I take all the rugs out and I wash them. I get down on my hands and knees and I scrub underneath the stove and the counters. My slight tangent, my roommate made a little pact, correct, with the apartment spirit, and she was like, oh, I'll vacuum at least once a week, and if she forgets to, her anime figurines start moving a little bit. And she's like, well, I put eggs in the garbage disposal, and I was like, that wasn't your pact though, you made a completely different set of rules.
That's between you and them. No.
Yeah. I was like, if you got to renegotiate, that's not on me.
We got time for one more question? And by time, I mean, do you feel like fielding one more?
No.
Perfect.
My time is y'all's.
That's fair.
I love talking.
All right. Coming from Snow, we have, so how do you navigate doing witchy crafts? You mentioned making spell jars there. For people of other traditions and religions.
So with that, if it's something closed, I don't touch it. That's not my business. You go to someone that's in there. But for anything else, it's especially with the one coworker who needed the angel stuff done. It was a matter of going, okay, tell me your world framework, and then I can work from there. And then it's a lot of research of, okay, so in this section of like the Bible, they have like how to do these or whatever doctrine has come out from the church, and it's following within that framework, making it useful to the situation that's being requested. Because my whole thing is, this isn't my sandbox, but I can be respectful of it.
So it's chaos magic, just done the right and respectful way, not the, shitty way.
I do try.
There you go. I mean,
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, what has been your most profound experience doing these spell jars, if you don't mind me asking?
So the first time one actually like worked, and it was no longer just kind of like a thought experiment happening, because I did spend a lot of time switching between atheist and agnostic, because I was very much the witchcraft is cool, all of that's cool, but like science. And it's a pity I flunked every math class I ever walked into, because like it means I couldn't be an astronaut or an astronomer. It's kind of bullshit. So I spent a lot of time trying to make science and magic coexist. It was something that was really hard for me. And so that first time one worked, I was like, science is magic, magic is science. Cool. It was something I had heard before, but until like it hits you, it's just like it's another fucking platitude. And then having one work for someone else I made was also one of those like, I'm a witch.
That's fantastic. All right, Terrence, I've been talking a whole lot. Come on.
So, when you got hit with that, okay, this stuff might actually be real, and you were at one point a pretty hardcore scientific materialist, or scientism materialist, as it were, what did that do to your worldview? Because I'm sure there were like vestiges like left over of atheism that are really hard to get rid of or tamp down.
Yeah, so I do still struggle with it sometimes. It helps that so I'm actively in therapy. If anyone ever thinks about, ooh, should I go to therapy? Please go to therapy. And so it helps that my therapist she's more agnostic now. But when I talk about having stuff, she helps me walk through it. So it's kind of like talking with Jim, you know. Are you sure it's not a sock puppet? And then, are you criticizing this so much that you are actually convincing yourself in the other direction? And so I don't want to say like it shattered my worldview, but it was more of like the kintsugi, where it took the pieces that were already kind of broken and then melded them together in a way that made sense and made things a little bit, you know, prettier, because like you can use straight super glue and make things look seamless.
Right.
Okay. But having that extra layer of the gold leaf. I'm an English kid. I like the poetry of it.
I think that there's an importance there though, because instead of like, well, I'm going to super glue this and the cracks aren't going to be noticeable, you're actually emphasizing the facts that the cracks are there and appreciating that the cracks are there. There's a lot of lessons in that. I appreciate the hell out of that.
Yeah.
Moreover, what I find really interesting about the process is that it's similar to my own separation from Catholicism and having to take the experiences that I had while I had that worldview and then somehow go, okay, shit, now what do I do with this information?
Yeah. Did you have the experience of having that weird like puzzle piece that you know goes somewhere and it's just a matter of like flipping it back and forth, trying to like press it into spots where it kind of fits but it doesn't?
It didn't click for me with regards to that until ancestor worship and veneration became a thing. Mm-hmm. Because there was always this, what do I do with all these Catholics in my family line at some point?
Same.
And it's like, oh, Well, statistically speaking, not all of them are going to be assholes, and statistically speaking, not all of them are going to be against you just for being a pagan. Okay, well, what do we do with you now? Oh, click, got it. Ancestor worship and veneration was the thing.
Yep.
For me, that was the pack work. It was because like I found heathenry first, right? Because it was available and it was there. And it was like, I mean, yeah, this is close. And like I really convinced myself for a while that like, yeah, no, this is the thing. This is the thing that I was looking for.
Horse blinders.
Yeah, right. Like, yeah, because there's like, you know, and like I can do all the wolf stuff that I keep hearing all the howling about. Like I can do all that, right? That Odin and there's all these wolf gods. It's great. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Heathenry comes with its own wolf.
Yeah, right. Like it's fine. It's fine. All the shots.
All the shots. I might die though. Let's not do that. I'll do sips.
And then it was like, I got into the pack stuff and I was like, this doesn't fit like comfy. This fits like, this doesn't even fit like home. This fits like skin. And like, yeah, it was the puzzle piece that I turned in. I was like, oh, this fits. I'm an idiot.
And it, I don't know about for you guys, but it was one of those, the puzzle piece went in and it was like all of those game mechanics where all of a sudden the puzzle shifted and you're like, the whole damn thing was upside down. Cool.
Yep, exactly that.
It was both Gucci and gang and neither one.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, because that was also when I started thinking about the veneration of saints as part of an ancestral practice. Like everything started like clicking when I understood it specifically through the lens of working with ancestors. So even to a degree, working with Othin and working being very different from worship, just putting that out there. The gulf between worshiping Odin and working with Odin or working for Odin is pretty damn wild. And I think that sometimes that does get lost in conversation because like worshiping Othin, for me anyway, was a very different beast from working with him. And yeah, sometimes there's marching orders that come down and you're like, why? And it's just like you got to go with the flow and trust that the information you're getting is valid and that you know what the hell you're doing after a certain point. A while back, I made a TikTok video talking about this where after a certain point, like you've done enough fucking studying to where you are either going to trust your instincts or not. And you're going, what is more information at this point going to do besides trying to salve your anxieties about, well, what if I get this wrong? Or what if I don't know what I'm talking about? When in point of fact, you've already demonstrated you do.
Not even pushback, but a thought to add to that though. Part of that studying, part of that work that you're doing though, is building the discernment in.
Sure.
Right? Like, I think that's a point that gets missed almost entirely in a lot of these conversations. And like I've noticed this on AGF a couple times. Caitlin, I love you and I'm calling you out slightly. I think it's the expert problem. It's the professor problem of you forget how much is already just built into everything you already do. Because like I remember once Caitlin was talking about like y'all were answering a listener question and Caitlin was talking about how she didn't feel like she had a lot of discipline in her practice, and then she went on to talk about her practice, and it was like, Caitlin, that's an extremely disciplined practice. Like that's more than I do. Like, right. And that's, if Caitlin is upset with me about that, she has no problem telling me. Anyway,
I mean, I think it's
The plateau effect.
It's the plateau effect, but this is also why it's so important to have peers of some way, shape, or form. Because if I'm forever stuck in my own head, evaluating my own processes, I'm not giving them to outside scrutiny. And scrutiny isn't a negative thing. You've talked about it with your therapist, being like, okay, maybe we should dial back the I'm going to be critical about myself thing. Because you've already done the work.
Yeah, it's one of those, I'm like, man, I'm a bad pagan. I don't do any rituals. I usually miss Sabbats. Like, I'm just trying to vibe. And then I'll go through and explain like how I do my workings. And I'm like, actually, I think I'm doing a little bit more than I'm giving myself credit for here. And kind of connected to that, I will never be a warrior, which is fine. It is just not my calling in life. I believe it was Laura O'Brien who said, in the Morrigan's hands, you are a tool. And she will reforge you until you become the one that she's needed. So my reforging hasn't been at the gym or in a dojo or anything like that. It's been therapy. It is breaking all of the bullshit that I'm going to have to... ancestor work for the next couple of generations is going to be a fucking nightmare. I'm not looking forward to it. But it's also one of my things is I'm to be a teacher of some sort, which is where the hag at the end of the road ends up coming in. But I can't do that if I'm so buried in my baggage that I'm drowning. She has no use for someone who can't look past their own bullshit to help others.
Yeah.
Yep. So coming on the show's been a good thing, huh?
Pardon?
So coming on the show, it's definitely coincidence and definitely
Oh yeah,
So Melikor's an elder.
I mean, sure. Listen, I'll help out. I can't like run a ritual. We go back to I have at least 4. Fuck off, Kai. I have 4 Virgo placements. I am the most grounded person you know. I've only been to 1 ritual to which I had to seek help with grounding. And it was a ritual for the Morrigan at the last convocation that was held. Maybe. And like the energy was fine. And any access I was the lightning rod. I was taking the access and regrounding it, which was great, except for like 3 days later, I ended up going to my Hades altar and I was like, please help me. I cannot ground. I have had every root vegetable I can get my hands on. I have gone and touched the most grass. I cannot. And so think of it as a Southern style baptism. He went, that's okay, sweetie. I got you. He picked me up, dunked me in the underworld, shook me around, brought me back up, and then I slept for like 16 hours. It was great.
That's fabulous.
So if you need help with grounding or anything other than raising energy, I got you. Just hit me up. I'll do my best.
I mean, honestly, though, like, I really can't say this enough. And I think we've said this at least once, if not more than that, because I think we say this a decent amount on the show. But, like, having a good grounding person in the ritual is of the utmost importance. Like,
yeah, and if you can't figure out who that person is, it would be you. Like,
or you really fucked up and there's no one there.
Right. Which, you go to enough rituals, you're gonna find that. You're gonna find that.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I show up to places and it's usually me.
This is a really good point. I want to just jump in here. Elders, most of somebody you turn to advice, you don't got to run shit. Yes, that. And I think because we have a sincere lack of elders in the community that haven't turned into pieces of shit, to a certain degree, there's a kind of we're raising our own because
Mhm.
we just don't have the people. I think we're also running into at least from the LGBTQIA perspective, we have an entire generation that we lost to the AIDS crisis. So a lot of the millennial generation of queer folks have been having to raise themselves. And
Oh, yeah.
so I think that there's a very similar divide, maybe not exactly the same, but there's a generational gap there between the last generation or two of pagans and modern, especially millennials and zennials, because so many of us have had to raise ourselves. I think
Yeah,
that there's
and
this generational gap that we've had to traverse.
true. And I also, when at all possible, do not like to subscribe to the Google is free. So I try to be the person that
Thank
I
you.
really needed between 19 and 25, where I was like, I need someone to help me. And everyone was like, sorry, I'm too busy, or that's outside of my wheelhouse. I don't have time to learn. And it's like, fair, valid. I respect you. I'm still drowning. So I try to be the opposite of that. I am willing to go and spend time to learn how to do all of this other stuff to help people out. Because I sure made some choices because I didn't fucking know any better. And no one was there to tell me no. So,
Oh shit! I almost decorated my monitor with Zevia.
sorry.
But I mean, that's the thing. Like an elder, I think really what marks the difference between somebody who's just old in the community versus somebody that's an elder is you're actually taking your experience and you're applying it to the community versus sitting back on your ass and just saying, well, I've got all this wisdom and accumulated knowledge. Come get me. Like
Yeah.
elders
Read their
actually are involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like this one. Like, yeah, I've had to figure out being queer and non-binary all by myself, plus the internet. Hence, me still not really knowing what the fuck is going on. I want to tie this into something that you commented on earlier about not using the excuse of Google is free to not pass on information. I really appreciate that, especially because when the Longship was forming, so much of the community dialogue was, well, Google's free. You can find these PDFs. You can find these books. But there was no context on how to interpret them.
Mm-hmm. Or they were really fucking dry. That's my issue with a lot of old tales, and why a lot of my, I do my due diligence and all of that, but a lot of my practice is vibes. What works? Because I can go through and I can read someone's interpretation of an oral tradition that's been dead for several thousand years. Or I can be like, hey, Dad, do you like black coffee? Yeah? Cool. I'll pour some out for you on Father's Day, which is an actual tradition I do. I make a cup of espresso and I go out in the morning on Father's Day and I dump it into dirt and I love you. Happy Father's Day. That's my ritual for Hades. My yearly has to be done. But you can't get that from, just read the sources. I'm tired. I'm an English kid, but I'm not like that kind of English kid,
No.
No, I get you.
And I really am, for me personally, I learned textual analysis way before I started any of this other shit. Like, that was how I started college, was English major doing textual analysis. So I got into paganism and I was like, yeah, isn't everybody doing that? None of you know how to read.
No, I don't, but it's fine. I'm pretty and my shit works.
But that's the thing. You do, first of all. Second of all, but that's the thing. Like, people, like, when I say you don't know how to read, I don't mean like you don't know how to understand the words in front of you. I'm saying there is a very different way to read and understand text that is textual analysis, that is not taught in high schools, that is not taught in. You can learn the definitions from Google. Hopefully they're correct ones. You can't gain experience from Google, only from actual discourse and experiences. That and there is such thing as learning from the generations that come before you, but one that requires the generations that came before you to not be giant pieces of shit and actually being willing to teach, which are two different things. And also, you still need to know how to interpret what they're saying, which is, again, a thing that they have to teach you. And it's a whole fucking thing. Because, like, the whole thing about, like, putting things into context and what does this actually mean? Not just the words on the page, right? Because if you look at the Norse mythos, fucking, that's not paganism. That's nonsense. That's Christianized bullshit and more Christianized bullshit. Getting into what this actually means requires what's called in the field a close reading on top of a bunch of theoretical analysis, which is a bunch of jargon to say you have to read real close and then you have to like actually think about and look at what you're doing and examine the context that's in, the motivation of the author, the context of the author, and the culture at the time, and then also apply that to what can that mean now. And that's not easy. That's not even easy to explain. It's certainly not easy to do.
Well, it's certainly not easy. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's like back when you were in school, you had the reading and then the critical thinking questions.
Yep. I think, too, though, a really big stumbling block for a lot of us, if we're looking at sources of lore, if we're looking even at old spells, like I've been going through the Trolldammer book, and most of these spells I will never fucking use. Not in a million fucking years. I've got no interest. They're interesting from a historical perspective and how they might be applied in different ways outside of their historical context. But as straight up a spell resource book, most of it is completely useless to me. And that's not because these spells aren't effective or they aren't useful. The context isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
So it requires application. And I think that's where a lot of the sources that we've got really stumble and fall. Because you take whatever issue you will with Snorri, God knows I do, but there's no instruction manual on how to heathen because that wasn't the point. He was there to save the poetic structures and a little bit of the context for how you make poems. Like his purpose wasn't to save these myths. And if you try to apply a Christian lens to Snorri's work and expect it to work out the same way, you're going to be really fucking disappointed.
Mm-hmm. I would like to add in a little thing of one of my big issues when I was first starting and like going, okay, the fuck is polytheism? Because for a long time I didn't have a word for it because you had Catholic, atheist, agnostic, and Wicca, and none of those worked for me. And so when I started to like hedge into the
hedge.
When I started to get into polytheism, I was like, man, do I really I like the concept of evolution. I like space. I flunked math, and space is just math with black holes. And then it was during my binge, because I binged all of Three Pagans and a Cat, and then I binged all of Around Grandfather Fire. And there was at one point where you're like, we're not tied to mythic literalism. And I was like, thank God. Okay, I can actually do this now because I think you made a joke about like, it would be cool if the earth was a giant skull, but it's not. That's
that'd be fucking metal. That would be metal as fuck.
It would be metal as However, and just hearing that was immensely helpful. So thank you. You've helped a lot.
Thank you. That actually means a lot. That does need to go in a t-shirt.
Yeah.
I think you picked up on something really. I think it's pretty fundamentally important about polytheism and about magic in general. It doesn't need to be materialistically, I should say, true for it to be true and valid. If you go around trying to look for scientific evidence that we are inside of a giant fucking skull, you're going to be really disappointed because you're applying mythical literalism to metaphoric truths. And like, without probing these truths, you're going to be kind of left wondering, what the fuck am I even going on about? But I mean, these are important. These are almost foundational to understanding ourselves as pagans, as magic users and magic weavers. Like, if you are applying a hard line, this has to make materialist sense, rather, you're going to have a bad time, because these are operating on different layers of understanding and truth, right?
It's poetry.
Yeah.
And poetry is good. I don't care what people say. Because again, I am an English kid. As soon as I was like, ooh, I can see this as poetry and it's valid and I'm not going to get shit from it. Dope. Everything made sense.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say made sense.
No, I mean, there's logic.
Yeah.
There's logic, though. If you take the mythic literalism out of it, heathenry, and I'm just going to say heathenry because that's like my primary focus in life. Heathenry's magic, cosmology, all of it makes sense if you don't approach it through the lens of mythic literalism. Like, most religions in general work best when you don't apply them as though the myths must literally be true as written down in a time frame, and you can chart it on a graph.
Or that they're unchanging, because
exactly
they change story to story to story to story.
Yeah.
Or, I'm sorry, teller to teller to teller. There we go.
Both. That's the thing. The same
There's
teller can tell the story 6 different times and have 6 different stories. Like, that's the thing with myth.
Or you're me, and your dad is Hades, and you get like 3. 2 of them aren't great, and the other one is, this is Hades. He runs the underworld. He has death and taxes, and we don't talk about him because we don't want his attention.
Right.
And it's like, cool. So I am left with not a whole lot.
Oh no, this is great.
Ooh, yeah. Pissed. Sorry, you can just say mythic literalism is a hangover from Protestant Christian thought that pagans won't let go of. Yeah, because like so this never jived with my Roman Catholicism growing up, because it doesn't. Transubstantiation doesn't make sense from a literally mythic standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
So, like, even my Catholic brain would rebel against mythic literalism because the church service doesn't make sense. You turn us all into blood-drinking cannibals, which sounds metal as fuck.
Yeah.
But, like, you miss the deeper mystery, capital M, if, whether you're talking about eating Christ or eating Dionysus, you kind of miss it if what you're really going after is, well, one of you motherfuckers has got to be the sacrifice tonight.
I had a thought. I had a thing I was going to ask, and it's gone.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. This was like almost 10 minutes
3
ago.
ADHD people sitting in a group chat.
Baby Sarah's shooting what was bread, but is now a big chunk of flesh after the priest's blessing. I mean, you're not wrong. That's actually how Catholic theology works. And what really kind of threw me was, wow. It's because he's unleavened. What are you going to do?
You know, prion disease.
Nom nom. Now I've lost my entire plot. Oh shit! Thanks.
Only because we are approaching the hour mark of the take 2. I do want to get in real quick. I am drinking this really delicious vodka because it seemed appropriate for the night from Iceland that a friend got me recently, and it is genuine. Like, I'm not a big vodka fan, but like, it's actually really, really good vodka. Milk already told us what they are drinking. Terrence, what are you drinking tonight? Two Trees Crisp Apple.
This is amazing, and unfortunately, it is now gone because I used it as a mixer. The main ingredient that I am drinking tonight is this thing, which my partner turned me on to. Holy crap, rum chata. This is dangerous, folks. Like, it's great as a mixer. It's great on its own. It's good in your coffee.
It tastes like French toast, goes down just as easy, and all of a sudden you're a half a bottle down and you don't know your name.
And JD honey whiskey.
Yep. All those are good together.
They are really, really good together. Holy shit.
Enjoy the honey whiskey for me. It gives me really bad heartburn. So, like, just looking at it, I'm like, ugh. Gotta take my medicine.
Yeah. Yeah, my partner introduced me to rum chata, and I have never looked back because it's amazing.
Yeah. No, it's really good. There was this taco restaurant in and I can't remember the name of it, in the town that I lived in South Carolina. And they did a drink called the Dude's Rug or something like that. And it was
what?
It was a white Russian, but instead of the cream, you used rum chata. And it was...
Did you say the Dude's Rug or the Dude's Rub?
The Dude's Rug, I think. Sorry.
Oh, with a G.
Yeah, G.
Cool. I'm like looking at my rum chata askance. Like, I mean, like I could see it because.
Also, I don't know if you've tried it yet.
You tell me.
You take the rum chata and you mix it with root beer, and it tastes like a root beer float.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's mine and my roommate's New Year's shot every year.
Oh, I am a terrible heathen. I've never actually watched The Big Lebowski.
It's fine. I forgive
you. Yeah. No wonder that didn't make sense to you.
College made it unpalatable to me. It's kind of the same reason I didn't watch a lot of Doctor Who when it first came out.
That's legit.
That's fair.
And honestly, The Big Lebowski, while I do very much enjoy the movie, is also not nearly as good of a movie as people make it out to be. Like,
oh no, it's stoner humor, but like it's slightly more highbrow than most stoner humor.
Mm-hmm. It's better than Pineapple Express.
I've never seen that.
Stoner humor because I watched Harold and Kumar go to White Castle and figured out this was really not for me.
Yeah, same vein. Yeah.
I dated a stoner and that killed it for me. I also went to public school. So like I lived every stoner movie.
Yeah.
So I'm actually with Snow on this. Like, I actually like Cheech and Chong genuinely, but I haven't seen The Big Lebowski. I am in that boat too, because for some fucking reason, my dad thought it'd be really funny to let us borrow Up in Smoke from the local video store when I was a kid. And my mom was like, what are you doing?
It's kind of like letting your kid have a sip of beer. As long as like they're within eyesight, shit's pretty funny.
Mm-hmm. Ooh. I watched the zombie one with Simon Pegg. That was okay. Is that a stoner comedy? Like Shaun of the Dead? I guess it could be.
See, that falls more into like parody than stoner comedy to me. Because like I didn't feel like I was missing out. Because like I do not partake. It does not do anything for me. I just drink. So a lot of the stoner jokes lose their appeal because it's just not me.
Mm-hmm.
That one I still found pretty funny, and I have like a thing with zombies, which is funny with the amount of dead that I work with. Death energy. Although that's usually putting shit into the ground and, you know, helping them pass on. It's funny. I work in logistics. I've worked in logistics for like 5 years now. Granted, it's with cars, but the joke's still there. And I'm reminded anytime I'm like, is this a right fit for me? And they're like, you're a control freak. And I'm like, you're right. And that works great with U.S. Customs.
So this explains why your witchcraft is just so. Understood. Mm-hmm. I mean, work with what you got. If you're a logistician, it makes total sense.
My favorite computer program is Microsoft Excel, and I think that's all you need to know about me as a person.
Yep. You're a wonderful person, Melkor. You're not going to hear me argue on this.
Thanks.
I have questions, but mostly but why Excel? It's only
Because you can run Doom in it.
I mean, you can.
Well, there's that. However, so bear with me here.
Right, Frog.
You can make tables. I make spreadsheets. I used to do, at a previous job, I had to do daily reports that got sent to like the state. That was all done in Excel, all done in pivot tables. I can't remember how to make a pivot table now, but everything I do for work is in Excel because it is easy copy. It is easy paste. You can color code things. I love color coding, Virgo. And if you're feeling real spicy, you can use it to make patterns for like knitting and quilting. And so it is a multi-tool, and I love it. And also my grandfather, before he passed, I'm a lot like him. I dabble in everything. I am a jack of all trades, master of none, and I mean that as like a good thing instead of the usual like me. And he loved Excel. So it's got so many uses. How can you not love Excel? You can be really weird with it and it still doesn't break.
Okay, that's fair because Excel actually is kind of a workhorse program in that, because I was thinking, my question was, but like there are better things for a lot of what Excel does. And I was like, yeah, but nothing really does everything that Excel does.
Mm-hmm. If I need something like super niche, I can look up a program for that super niche thing. But I like broadly useful and can be mostly tailored to what I need.
Yeah.
Especially because I work in automotive. So everything, I work in automotive. I have slight dyslexia and dyscalculia. So letters and numbers aren't my friend, really. And so being able to copy and paste shit or put on filters saves me legitimately days of time, cumulative. You know the word I'm looking for.
Yep.
And that's why I love Excel.
So I actually think that this is something that I want to highlight because it is actually witchcraft. It's something that our mutual friend Jim pushes a lot is the Excel spreadsheets that he applies to spirits. Like you literally can apply this to spiritual accounting. And I think that, using the tools where you're at with the skills you've already got and approaching that to paganism, to magic, to whatever your interest is in this wild woolly world we inhabit, I think that really is what is a defining characteristic of a person's practice, right? I don't use Excel spreadsheets for jack nor shit. But I will use Google Docs until the day I die. Because I can easily spread the information around. Likewise, keep notes in Google Calendar. Like being a poly-pagan person, like I can't live without those tools at this point because trying to do a paper calendar is fucking impossible. My ADHD doesn't keep up with it.
I gave up on paper calendars when I was about 6. So everyone's like, oh, keep calendars. And I was like, I have to remember those exist. So like Google Calendar synced to my phone.
Object permanence is a bitch.
Yep. All right. We are at just over an hour of take 2. So do we have time for one more question?
Oh, for sure. I have nothing going on. My whole night is free.
Okay, cool. So last question from Snow is, so is witch your main self-identifying label? When did you adopt that and start using it in conversation with others? And has it always been comfortable?
Yes, very early. Because even when I was bouncing around through different religions, I was still doing witchcraft. And I am the most annoying queer pagan you've ever met. I work for one of the big three car companies. And so when I was working in office, I was the person in the building in corporate. Sorry, there was a plane. I had the bluest hair and the most pronouns. So anytime people had a question about gender, lefty politics, witchcraft, alternative religions, they would come down to me. And sometimes it fucked them up because I was in an office with two other people the size of like a storage closet. And I had like 3 types of invisibility sigils, an anti-gossip spell, and another invisibility because I didn't want people fucking with me. So they'd be like, hey, is Melkor? Oh, you're sitting right there. How did I miss the blue hair? And I'm like, it's fine. You know, I just keep my screens real high. That's why you missed me. It's fine. And so, yeah, it was something that's always been comfortable because I grew up in a household where it was okay to be a witch. The only time I ever got a, hey, you need to check yourself was during like my 6 months as the douchebag atheist. Because my mom was like, you do not get to tell other people what is and isn't in their world. Absolutely not. Check yourself. And then I was like, okay, well, barring that, I guess I really am just agnostic and I was being a douchebag. But I was like 14. So, you know, it comes with the territory.
Teenagers are dicks.
No.
Yeah. Especially because one of my mom's close friends is First Nations. And so, bless her heart, there was only like one time where like I said something sideways and Andrea was like, it's okay, sweetie. You'll get past this.
You will get past this. Yeah. And
that is how you tell an elder from the young blood that wants to fight with everything.
Yep.
I'm right here.
I love you.
Yeah,
I include myself in this.
It came from a place of you're allowed to have your worldview. You do not get to force that on others because congrats, you are becoming the thing you hate. Which was then a 3-day.
Oh.
And then the tennis game started between me and the deities. It was fucking great. Love that shit.
Moment when you figure out your atheism is more evangelical than your previous religion.
Yeah. It was a big yikes for me.
Yeah. All right.
Thankfully, it was short-lived.
Yeah.
So we're coming up at 8:30.
Yep. All right. So on that note, we will end the broadcast. Thank you so much for being on, Melkor. Thank you, everyone who's watching now and in the future. And for anyone who is on the Discord, we'll try and see y'all in the after party. Thanks, and have a wonderful night, y'all.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.